Namaste, yogis. How are you? I'm here today with Flissy Saucier. Welcome, Flissy.
Hi, thank you.
Flissy Saucier is a yoga teacher, and she's also a belly dancer. But today we're going to be talking about yoga. And Flissy is going to be discussing with us, do your own practice, because we want to encourage everybody to have a wonderful personal yoga practice. So thank you, Flissy, for preparing some information for us.
My pleasure.
Can you let people know how to reach you?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website. It's omchantress.com, OMCHANTRESS. And you can also find me on all the social medias with that same handle on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Flissy Omchantress is my Facebook page. So if you go to Facebook/Omchantress, you'll find me there.
Very nice. So Flissy and I know each other because we both share a common teacher, Eric Schiffman. And so we met each other going to one of his workshops and are part of his wider community of people. And then also Flissy and I also share a mutual friend, Joe Robertson, who was, I believe he did your first teacher training, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He just told me
also,
recently.
my very first yoga teacher was Helen Heffers, who I know, who
Yeah.
have studied with her a bunch too.
She was one of my main teachers.
Yeah.
So we both lived in Columbia, Maryland, although I think I moved away before. I don't know how long you've lived there, but I think I moved away before.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely moved away before I met you.
Right.
But we both have that connection, and you're still there in Columbia, Maryland.
Yeah. And I think I live in the same neighborhood that you did, so.
Oh, seriously? Yeah, it's really lovely. It's a wonderful place, Columbia, and there's some nice yoga there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about doing your own practice. And by the way, I'm with the Sadhana community, and so you can find us through the Facebook group, Sadhana Community for Yoga Teachers and Enthusiasts, and all the links are below in the YouTube recording to find all of these. So, Flissy, tell me a little bit about doing your own practice. For you personally, when you started practicing yoga, how did you begin your own practice?
You know, it's really funny because, the very first classes I took were with Helen Heffer, and it was through the Women's Center at the college that I went to. And so it was such a sweet class, and we would sit together and have a little chat about some philosophy before we went into our practice. And there was something about that was so chill that it seemed like not a big deal to just start doing a little bit of whatever we were doing in class on my own during the week, to just be like, oh, we tried this pose. I'm going to go home and give that a try before the next class. And so even when I very first started practicing yoga, there was always a little bit of it that I always did on my own. And I don't know why, but that very simple standing side bend thing, there was a period of time where I did that every single day after I brushed my teeth in the morning. I don't even know what the appeal of that one was at the time, but I was just this is my new favorite thing. And I just did it every day after I brushed my teeth. It took 20 seconds, and I did that simple.
We had a conversation with Joe Robertson where we had a conversation about little tiny habits and forming tiny habits. And that was one of the things, was to kind of connect with something that you're already doing, like brushing your teeth. So you instinctively were creating that.
That's funny. Yeah. And it does. And there are, I would say in my practice now, I have a different thing that starts to unfold my practice, but I think that is a really helpful thing to have something that is the thing that initiates your practice time. And for me, it was brushing my teeth. That was the thing.
I think that sometimes people don't think that counts, just to do something stand in the grocery store line and stand on one foot. They're sort of oh, that doesn't really count. That's not a real practice, but that's actually
counts. Yeah, and then as you know, like studying with Eric Schiffman, personal practice is like, it's the main deal. Like learning how to do the fundamentals is important, but what's more important is to take that information and start to embody it and do it on your own. So yeah, so having a personal practice has always been a really important part of my study of yoga. And after studying with Eric for some time, I also went into training in Vini Yoga with Gary Krafsow. And the whole idea behind Vini Yoga is to adapt a practice to the individual. And so what's really interesting to me, and like all of the different teachers that I've been with, there's always been this common thread that like, okay, I'm teaching you a thing, but now go do it. Like go do it on your own. Has been the main teaching through just about any teacher that I've had.
So I think with the video, I just want to explain to people who may not be familiar with that system of yoga that it's a healing style of yoga and tends to be more gentle. And that it comes out of, I think they're technically not allowed to use the term Vini Yoga anymore. For a while they banned it. But it's the people who studied with TKV Desikachar who had called it Vini Yoga. And I think it's still kind of out there, even though Desikachar just wanted to call it yoga.
There's like some drama around the word Vini Yoga. But Desikachar did authorize Gary to use Vini Yoga in what he's doing and to call what he's doing the American Vini Yoga Institute. So at least
he's one of the main Vini Yoga teachers. Right. And it's wonderful that you got to practice with him. He's on my list of people to study with.
Yeah, he's amazing.
So that practice is a little more like connecting the movements to the breath and like moving specifically with phases of the breath.
Correct. Yeah. Moving with breath is super important, and it's the like the connection with the movement with the breath. So I would say, like, if you go to a vinyasa class, there's a lot of choreography that's kind of goes parallel to the breath, but in Vini Yoga, you're really using the biomechanics of breathing to help move your body, which that doesn't always happen in vinyasa classes, although I think it probably should.
I do too. I actually have a course on that specifically. I like how you said that, the biomechanics of breathing. I might steal that from you. So do you have any tips for people who are joining us about what they can do to practice on their own if they're just getting started or if they're stuck? Because I've been getting lots of messages from people who are yoga teachers who are telling me, I really want support for my personal practice. And it's part of why I've started adding this topic into the conversations.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And especially for yoga teachers, I can relate to that because the work we do, it can be so exhausting, and it can lead to you feeling uninspired or just burnt out or tired. And so this is relevant to teachers as well as to people that are brand new to starting to practice yoga at home. And that is, so my big piece of advice is to connect with whatever your why is. So why is it that you're doing a yoga practice? And, if you're a yoga teacher, you might be, a lot of the time, I think it can feel like you're doing your yoga practice just to get material for your classes, which is it is a reason to practice yoga. But why is it that you got in the yoga game in the first place?
Well, I think what you lose is that sense of doing it, that personal experience of yoga, because suddenly you're like taking notes and sort of going, well, this is what I would do in a class. And so you sort of lose that sense of, this is just for me.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's sort of like preparation for teaching. And I think there's a question that people have about, is that for real? And that was one of the things I liked about working with Eric, is understanding that it's okay. That's what happens when you're a teacher, and it's supposed to be like that.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching or practicing so that you're generating ideas for class. But if it becomes the only reason that you're practicing, I think that can be really stressful because you feel like you always have to be like inventing something new or whatever the thing is. And, you know, depending even on who your clientele is, it like an appropriate practice for me could be completely different from the people that I'm teaching. So, yeah. So if you can come back around and think about like your big picture why, like why do you want to do yoga, period. But also just think about like even just the little why for why are you getting on your mat right now? Like, do I need to feel like I need to relax? Do I feel like I got this shoulder thing going on and I want to like move my arm around a little bit? Do I feel like maybe I went to a yoga class and I got really excited about practicing this pose and now I want to practice it? So having a purpose to your practice is going to be really helpful for motivating you to do just one practice. And I think it is really helpful for motivating you to continue practice over the long term.
I like your suggestion too of the little why, because I think sometimes it feels like, oh, it's supposed to be this big grandiose thing. And I love this idea of just, but what's the thing right now that's sort of firing you up or exciting you, or whether it's something physical or something emotional that you might need to get on the mat now. Mm-hmm. You, rather than necessarily like, oh, this is what I'm going to do every day for the rest of my life, creating plans.
Yeah.
You work with people, you help them to develop their own practice, right?
Yeah, and that really is the main passion for me as a teacher right now. It's like I really want to empower people to do this, to do their own practice. So, and I think,
what are you hearing from people about their concerns and what they're coming to you with?
I think there's a couple things that happen. So I think there's a lot of people that come to see me one-on-one who I think there's two different things that can happen. One is somebody who wants to get started in yoga but isn't quite ready to be in a group class. Like they're like, oh, I'm going to do it wrong, or I just want to know something before I go to a class. And then the other thing is there are people that maybe have done a little bit of yoga, but they're like I know yoga's supposed to be good for me, but I've taken a couple classes and I don't really like it. And so those are the people that I often help who are like confused by the yoga classes that they've taken. Or
unfortunately, there's some not very good yoga classes out there now, and I've gotten this too, where people come to me and they're kind of like, I took it at a gym and I'm not sure what to do, or they're sort of confused by yoga.
Yeah, and in the subgroup of that, I'm also working a lot with belly dancers who have specific goals for dancing, and yoga can help them, but like a general yoga class might not be specific enough for their particular needs. So if you're looking, if they have a particular postural concern, or they're trying to build strength or flexibility to execute particular movements, then like going to a general yoga class isn't necessarily going to be the best fit for them, because like you have to work pretty consistently over a long period of time to do something crazy like splits or big back bends or stuff. And so if you go to a regular old yoga class once a week, like maybe you do back bends 1 week and then it's not until 3 weeks later that you ever touch that pose again. And so when you develop a personal practice, and one of the things I help people with is to identify specifically what are the postures that are going to be the most benefit to you with the least amount of risk.
Wow, that's interesting. So how do you determine that?
So that is a combination of some of the science of sequencing and purpose, a lot of which I learned through Vinyasa training, but some of it is just from years of other yoga experience. And then the other part is just having a lot of conversation with my clients and seeing what their bodies look like when they're moving.
I see. So some of it is just an evaluation with them.
Correct. Yeah.
And what their goals are, and then saying, okay, this is where you need to gain strength. And it sounds like a lot of the work that you're doing is very postural. That I haven't heard you mention people working on like their meditation practice or breath work.
Yeah, I would say I think just because the general yoga scene, that's still what people think about yoga is the postural stuff. But so that is most of the work that I'm doing. Sometimes I do pranayama with people too, but I would say mostly right now it's just the physical part.
Yeah, well, it's still important. I feel like a lot of people want to apologize about that, and that's like, well, that's how people are accessing it.
Yeah.
So what about yourself? What do you do for your own practice?
It's my favorite yoga answer, which is it depends. So, what my day-to-day practice looks like right now is much like my early routine of brushing my teeth and then doing my practice. I eat my lunch and then I take a 20-minute walk around the neighborhood. And that is a really important transition for me because I can get away from looking at the computer screen and doing all of the analytical thinking and start to get a little bit more into that mind-body connection just by the pattern of walking around and noticing what's going on in my neighborhood, the birds and what plants are coming up. And then I do my dance practice. So this is where it depends. So depending on what I'm working on in dance, I might use yoga to warm up for my dance practice, or I might use yoga to compensate for my dance practice, or I might do both. So usually I do yoga bookending my dance practice in some way. Usually I do it at the end, but sometimes I do it at the beginning too.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of a mashup of yoga.
Yeah, so I have a movement thing that happens in the afternoon. And my yoga practice.
Play music, or it was interesting. We had Kara Thorson on, who's an Iyengar yogi, and she had brought in tips. And her first tip was to sort of have something to mark the transition. She did the invocation to Patanjali. And so it's interesting that your transition is a walk, and I think it's nice for people to hear these different ways to transition into practice, and that it's sort of, it's whatever gets you there. Mm-hmm. And then also how do you, once you're in it, sort of how do you do it? And I was kind of surprised to learn with her that she actually listens to TV. Because she's so serious, and I was like, what? You listen to TV? And she was like, yeah, I listen to X-Files, or I listen to the radio, listen to Prairie Home Companion.
That's funny.
So I assume that you are listening to music.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it will take it, I can get lost in listening to music, so if it can take me too long to pick out what I'm going to listen to, and so sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just practice quiet.
I have certain ones that I listen to quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like when I hear that, I like that music. I know that it works well for me. And it's sort of I played a lot of this music for years and years. And then mm-hmm. sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just aren't in the mood. And sometimes I play I have specific things that are really in my mind to listen to for some mm-hmm. other, Dolly Parton or yeah. So you're doing your practice, and then how do you sort of wind up your practice?
Wind up my practice? Mm-hmm. It totally depends. So after my walk, sometimes I'll go right into dance practice and not do yoga yet. If I'm starting doing a yoga practice, 95% of the time I start with Chakravakasana, which is a Vini yoga thing, where I would say cat and cow is usually the thing that a lot of people start a yoga practice with. And so the Vini yoga equivalent of cat-cow is Chakravakasana. And so it's basically going from hands and knees, and then you exhale back to child's pose, and inhale back to hands and knees again. So it's really, really simple. I've probably done like 1,000 million Chakravakas in my life, and I'll probably do 1,000 million more of them. But it's really simple because it is a very easy way to connect breath and movement, and it's in hands and knees, and so it's easy to go from there anywhere. So you can either go down to doing postures that are laying on the ground, or go up to standing. So
just flip up into a squat and get up to standing.
Right. Yep. So that is most of the time, almost always, that is the first thing I do is Chakravakas.
So I want to share that we have a freebie, and I'm going to put it on the screen. Oh, we have a participant, and Karen, thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, you can put it into the chat. It was nice to have you join. She's been joining us for a lot of the conversations lately.
Hi, Karen.
I'll put the link in for this. So this is the download that we have, and I'll put it into the chat. So it is sadhanateaching.com//Flissy, Flissy. And it's just a little sheet for somebody who wants to practice. She uses her stick figures. You draw them so nicely.
Thank you.
So she has the stick figures just showing some a basic all-purpose yoga practice that you can do. Anybody can do this. It's designed to be basic. You want to talk a little bit about it, Flissy?
Yeah. So this yoga for anytime practice, this is a Vinyasa style practice. So that is kind of where all these things come from. So I'm pointing at my screen like you guys can see that, but you cannot. So it begins starting at number 1. So it's in 2 columns. So number 1, you just begin sitting. And so this is the default Vinyasa breath, where when you inhale, you expand your ribs and lift your chest. And when you exhale, you contract your belly in and up. And so that's how the breath helps to initiate all of these movements. And so, I won't go into huge detail about each of these things, but basically you got the little stick figures that show you what's happening. So number 2, of course, as I just mentioned, we start with Chakravakas.
And what is this part? In and X and N?
So the EX is X for exhale, and the IN is in for inhale, and the arrows show you what's happening. So you're in hands and knees, and then the exhale arrow takes you to child's pose, and the inhale arrow back takes you to hands and knees when you inhale. And then we've got next to it, we've got 6 times that tells you how many repetitions to move with your breath. And then in the next one, it says stay 3 BR. And that means to do it 3 times and then stay for 3 breaths. So that's how that's.
I like to say sustain. Because I don't want people to hold their breath.
Right. So you're breathing in and out for 3 breaths. And yeah, sustain is nice. Stay does have like a little bit of rigidity to it, but it is also shorter to write.
Hold.
Yeah.
So then each one of these, you're marking how many repetitions with the times. And
for simplicity's sake, there is a pattern to this, and so it's going to be 3 or 6 times for each thing. So there's this pattern of 6 times or 3 times and staying for 3 breaths. So I'm not going to throw anything crazy in there. It makes it easy to remember if you have a pattern like that.
What about this one,
alternate sides. So this is laying down in a supine twist. So you have your knees to your chest, and then you exhale to twist, and then inhale back up, and then exhale to go the other side. So alternate sides 6 times, and then stay.
Very nice. And then let me see if I can get back to my mouse here.
And I'm also offering, for anybody that's watching this, a 15-minute yoga chat. So if you download this document and you have questions like, I don't know what your stick figure means at number 12, or I need help with something, or this doesn't feel right, if you just go to my site, omchantress.com, private instruction, there's a link for our yoga chat. You can just sign up for that, and I can answer any questions you have real quick.
That's awfully nice. And she has actually her, email on here as well, and so a link to the website. So just to get on, you can just you can see her website on here. If you download this, you'll have that. This is so nice.
Thanks. Yeah, and then on that other page, I just have just a list of some general tips that can help you get started and maintain your practice.
So I think we're going to wind up, and I just wanted to know before we go, if you can tell us a little bit, if there's anything else that you want to share with us, or any other concerns that you're hearing from your students about their practice that you feel like you want to address.
I think, one thing I could maybe invite yoga teachers to do is to think about your why when you're teaching your group classes. And if you can not just teach people the postures, but teach them why they're doing them, that will really help people be empowered to do their own practice. So it's a skill that you as a teacher can also pass on to your students. And I think that really helps to build stronger relationships with your students. Because when people go home and practice, they come back with questions and are more excited to keep practicing. So I'm all for just continuing to share as much as you can as a teacher. And I think that is helpful for everybody.
Yes.
And if you are just beginning to practice yoga, my other piece of advice is to keep it really simple. And so, toothbrush stretch is a good place to start, to just start with just doing 1 or 2 or 3 things and see how it goes.
Yeah, I like that advice. We have a question. Karen said, when you have other students that have been in your practice and they are used to certain names of poses and you use your terms, do you think that's confusing, or what do you do?
That is a great question. And honestly, when I am teaching, I don't use posture names at all. So there isn't any confusion about what it is. So even though I just mentioned Chakravakasana, I will generally not use those words. And if I do, I will define them when I'm using them. So inhale to hands and knees, exhale to child's pose. I might talk people through that a few times and then say, this is called Chakravakasana. So I try to be consistent with my own vocabulary. And yeah, it is confusing when people use different words.
When I first started yoga, it was with a gym class, and I'm not sure what that teacher's background was, but I'm just going to guess based on the time that she had a Sivananda kind of background, because that was very popular in the South in the 70s and 80s. And a lot of the teachers I studied with really early on were kind of the people who started in the 70s, and then they kept on doing it even though it wasn't cool anymore. So, and then I discovered Iyengar, and one of the things that really freaked me out was that all the pose names were different. They were different poses, and I felt like it took me a long time to feel like I could have some confidence that I knew what the postures were.
Mm-hmm. And I also teach yin yoga, and yin yoga has a completely different vocabulary for postures too, and there's no Sanskrit in that. So, it's very weird. Everybody's got different names for things. It's confusing. Which is another reason I might like stick figures, because you just draw it and it is what it is.
So I like this question about, how do you make it easier for your students? Because I think once you know the pose names, then that's less of an obstacle. But I think when you find out, it can be a huge obstacle.
Yeah.
Well, they called that, like, for example, this pose, it's like, oh, that's half moon pose. Hang on one second. I'm going to grab this door. Sweetie. And then, like, that's another half moon pose is another pose in Iyengar yoga. And so, like, that can be very confusing to people, I think.
What do you do? Do you use Sanskrit and English names for things with people?
I tend to I try to use more English. There's certain ones where it's just almost a habit to use the Sanskrit. But I try to do more English. I think that I've heard from a lot of people that they find the Sanskrit to be confusing. And I try to make things accessible for people. And then, but there's certain ones where it's almost like just a habit, it's like Uttanasana. It's like, I almost don't know, how to think of that in English anymore.
Right.
So, yeah, but they're usually fairly common ones. So she said, what do you teach children?
I don't usually.
Yeah, she said certain ones, but she uses more English for hers as well. Yeah, and some people get taught that, like, they're supposed to use the Sanskrit, and I've heard this from people, and they kind of, I actually was interviewing people for a course, and a bunch of people were telling, like, one woman was like, do I really need to use the Sanskrit? Because she was told that. I was told that too, by, like, that I couldn't teach if I didn't memorize all the Sanskrit and know it. And now I've forgotten half the Sanskrit. And somehow I still managed to teach. So, and she says, what's the average age of your students?
Oh, it's a huge variety. I would say generally I teach women because I teach so many belly dancers, but it's everywhere from like 20s to 60s.
Yeah, so we're going to put the links down below, so we're going to wind it up. So thank you so much, Flissy.
Thanks so much for having me. It was really fun to talk with you and get to see your face.
I know, it was really nice. And thank you also for joining us, Karen. So we're going to be, if you want to join us, we're in the Sadhana community for yoga teachers and enthusiasts on Facebook. I'll put the link below. Flissy is omchantress.com, and we'll have the link below for that. We will have the free download available in the description here, so just follow the links to get the practice download. And we look forward to talking to you. Also, please like, share, and comment on the video. It helps more people to see it. So, Flissy, thank you so much, and we'll definitely have you back again. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Namaste.
Namaste.